Hi everyone. I just wanted to kind of make a little thing, I guess, before I start today's video, just making it very clear that there are a lot of names in this that I might mispronounce, and I've tried my best to learn the best pronunciations. I just hope you guys bear with me while I do this, because it was very hard to get through this without completely butchering the names. And even if I still do, I really do apologize. But other than that little brief thing, let's just get into today's video. Nintendo is a company that's released many different things over the years that many people have come to love. Pokemon, one of my favorites, Mario and Kirby are just a small fraction of iconic things to come out of Nintendo. Over the years, a lot of content has fallen to obscurity and become lost. Today, I'll cover 13 lost pieces of Nintendo media. In a 2010 press conference for the 3DS, an installment for the Mega Man Legends series was announced, Mega Man Legends 3. More information came later when it announced two new characters, Arrow and Barret. However, KJ Inufune, the creator behind the Mega Man series, denounced his departure from Capcom. That meant he no longer owned the series, and that he couldn't help on the development of Mega Man Legends 3. Even though Inufune left Capcom, they still went ahead with their plans to release the game. They announced a prototype version with 10 missions that would be released in the Nintendo eShop, which was supposed to be a prologue for the later game. The game was supposed to be released in 2011, however, Capcom announced that both games had been cancelled and neither would be finished, despite Unufune's request to complete them. Game Radar claims that only one person, Chris Hamilton, a journalist for Nintendo Power magazine, was the only one to play both games. So far, Capcom has held true to their word, as nothing about either game has come out since. There are many different lost 64DD games I could discuss in this video alone, but I'll only talk about a couple. So first, let's talk about Zelda Gaiden. It was intended to be an add-on for Ocarina of Time, but it was sadly cancelled after the 64DD failed miserably. Before the announcement of the game, Ocarina of Time was originally supposed to be a title for the 64DD, but it was shifted into a cartridge for performance reasons. The game was absolutely massive at the time it was released, at 64 megabytes, so it had to be halved in order to fit onto a cartridge. This caused cutscenes, enemies, and even two whole dungeons, the Ice and Wind Temple, to be deleted. Nintendo wanted to make up for the lost content, and they planned to release two add-on discs, one called Ura Zelda and the other Zelda Gaiden. For unknown reasons, Ura Zelda was cancelled, but development for the second game continued. Not long after that, Eiji Aonuma, the Zelda dungeon designer, felt that it was too similar to Ocarina of Time and called Shigeru Miyamoto to make a whole different game in a year. His challenge was accepted and development began. The team decided to use the same game engine and several graphics. However, the game had a similar release fate as Ocarina of Time, being ported into a cartridge rather than coming out on disc. The game ended up releasing in Japan under a different name, The Legends of Zelda Majora's Mask, on April 27, 2000, with other regions getting it soon after. Recently though, people found out that a bunch of content was deleted from this version as well. There's a lot of speculation around the early version of the game, like what survived and what was cut. Things like minigames, weapons, and cool features like a time-stopping power being left out. At the 2010 E3 convention, Assassin's Creed Brotherhood was announced along with Assassin's Creed Lost Legacy for the 3DS. After that, little information about the game was known other than the plot. The story was about Ezio Auditore traveling to Mayasoft to learn about Altair, the main character from Assassin's Creed. Fans are quick to say that the plot of this game was similar to another game of theirs. Because of this, the developers decided to change the game to Assassin's Creed Revelations. For some reason, the game was cancelled internally in September 2010, but wasn't publicly known until July of 2011. No concept art or gameplay footage of any kind has ever been released about the game. The only evidence we do have of this game are the logo and records of developers talking about it. I assume that they probably deleted any content they had of the original game since it came out a different game altogether. Before Squaresoft, now known as Square Enix, decided to take on the challenge of polygonal 3D gaming with Final Fantasy VII in 1995, they wanted to move forward with new technology. So, they promptly released the demo Final Fantasy VI, the interactive CG game. It was shown at SIGGRAPH of 1995 and had three characters, Terra, Locke, and Shadow, showing a brand new battling system. There were many rumors that this game was supposed to release for the Nintendo 64, but those were squashed when Squaresoft announced that the next installment would come out on the PlayStation. The little evidence we have of this game is a recording of the demo taking place on a PlayStation promotional disc. The playable version, however, cannot be found anywhere online and is considered lost. Earthbound 64 was an early version of the Game Boy Advance game Mother 3. It had been developed over 12 years, making a hard shift from the Nintendo 64 to the Game Boy Advance. The game was about two characters named Lucas and Klaus, whose lives are changed by an invasion from the Pig Mask Army. The game had a pretty troublesome development, as developers struggled to learn how to work with 3D titles and memory constraints from the consoles they aimed to release for. This resulted in many delays until its cancellation in 2000. Developers claimed that they had about 60% of the game coded, but only 30% was playable. There was a playable demo for Mother 3 at Space World 1999, and it received positive praise for its combat system, graphics, and music. At the time, an English press conference about the game claimed that there would be a localization of the game under the name Earthbound 64. Even though it was cancelled, Mother 3 was eventually released in 2006, but only in Japan for the Game Boy Advance. Many things changed between the two versions, like it going back to its 2D roots and Klaus not being a playable character. It'd be soon learned that Brendan Sector, who had worked on Mother 3, confirmed that a prototype for Earthbound 64 does exist, with him playing a majority of it before it crashed. Sector isn't sure where it ended up though, saying that Nintendo or Brownie Brown, now known as 1UP Studios, may have it. Other than that, rumors of fans having it do circulate, but there is no evidence to back that up. So, this game is considered lost until the developers release it in some form or someone happens to find it. Editing Kate popping in here. So recently more footage of this game was found, which is crazy. The YouTube channel Hard for Games seems to have acquired it from a Nintendo company report from 1998. So I think that gives some hope that more can be found, even though I've heard from some people that there's a potential that this footage is fake. So just kind of take this with a little grain of salt, I think. 12 Tales Conquer 64 or Conquer's Quest was the predecessor for Conquer's Bad Fur Day, first announced at E3 1997. It was met with strong criticism because people thought it was too similar to Banjo-Kazooie. So, in response, the game was pulled from release scheduling and was thought to be cancelled. In 1999, though, Rare decided to reformulate the game into Conquer's Bad Fur Day. Footage of the early game showed Conquer in areas that seemed Indiana Jones-esque. It also featured Barry, a playable character who was able to call monsters to her aid. Rare also showed off new features in other recordings of the game. This is all we seem to have, though, as no ROM has ever surfaced. Super Mario 128 was a Space World 2000 demo and was considered for the Nintendo GameCube and Wii. This demo featured 128 Marios with the ability to change in-game structures or even make the board into a pizza for some reason. In 2005, Reggie Fils-Aime said this game would also feature E3 2005, but it didn't. It wasn't until 2006 that Miyamoto announced that the game was cancelled. However, many elements of Super Mario 128 were used in Metroid Prime, The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, and Super Mario Galaxy. He also revealed that it had been transformed into a Pikmin game. It's unknown whether the game was ever completed, as no demo has ever surfaced, and the only proof we have of its existence are recordings from Space World and screenshots. Crash Landed, or I Am Crash Bandicoot, is a cancelled game from the Wii, Nintendo DS, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. Strangely, the game had different developers for different consoles. Renegade Kid developed the DS version, while Radical Entertainment did the other ports. Development started in 2009, but was completely halted when Activision laid off the entire team, cancelling both projects. It's said that the story has Crash mutated by the Cortex and tasked with saving his fellow Bandicoots from Dingodile. Unfortunately, the game was cancelled before ever being officially revealed. However, some concept art and videos have surfaced and can be found online. Some footage of the DS version can also be found, but no footage from the Radical Entertainment version has ever been found. Metal Slug, a popular run-and-gun series from SNK Playmore, had characters Marco and Eri running and using various artillery against enemies. Since it was a success, many ports were released for many different consoles. After the success of the Game Boy Advance version, though, more games for the series were greenlit. The Japanese magazine Famitsu announced 3 different Metal Slug games: Metal Slug 2, Metal Slug 3, and Metal Slug X, or maybe Metal Slug 10. It was originally supposed to come out in the winter of 2005, but was pushed to 2006 to coincide it with the 10th anniversary of the arcade release. Sadly, all 3 games were scrapped due to the limited size for GBA cartridges. No other information about these games is known currently, but other Metal Slug games have since followed. Kid Kirby is a cancelled Kirby game that was being developed by DMA Design. It was supposed to feature an infant Kirby rocking a pink curl who would have been controlled by the Super NES mouse. The game had a similar engine to Angry Birds, but was never fully developed before it was cancelled due to the unproductive development team and the overall failure of the Super NES mouse. A demo was produced, however, it was said to have vanished by Mike Daly, a developer for Kid Kirby. The only evidence to show the game existed is some sprites and concept art. Halo DS was a proposed game for the Nintendo DS, which had an unsolicited demo. Rumors about it swirled in 2007, but both Bungie and Microsoft kept silent about the game. On January 4th of 2007, Matt Casamassina of IGN claimed that he had played the demo, showing footage of the playable version. This version showed dual wielding in the Halo 2 map for Zanzibar, along with other new features. Matt also seemed to defend the origins of the demo, stating that it was created by a major studio, but he refused to name them. After that, Bungie employees Frank O'Connor and Brian Jarrett stated, "It's very likely that someone at some point in time created a prototype and tried to pitch it, which is probably what Casamassina is talking about, but there has never been an officially funded or sanctioned development of any sort of DS Halo game." In 2002, development was started and completed for Stage Debut, a game for the Game Boy Advance, but it was cancelled by Nintendo. The game was supposed to implement the unreleased Game Eye, a camera peripheral kind of like the Game Boy's camera. The game required players to take photos of their face and import them using the advanced link cable. The game was also supposed to feature characters from Mario, Animal Crossing, and Pikmin. Stage Debut was shown at E3 2003, but nothing else came out about the game after. It's assumed that the game was cancelled due to the Game Eye never being released, even though Shigeru Miyamoto stated that the game was, in my mind, still alive, comparing it to Mii's in the Mii channel. No ROM or builds have ever been leaked, and the only evidence we have of it is some screenshots and footage from E3 2003. Sadness was a survival horror game by Nibri, or Nibris, that was supposed to be released for the Nintendo Wii but ended up being cancelled. The game was set in pre-World War I Ukraine, with the main character Maria protecting her son Alexander after their train crashes in the countryside. The incident left Alexander blinded, which leads to his behavior getting worse as the game went on. The game was said to have branching storylines and 10 possible endings. No demo of the game was ever released, leading some people to say it's vaporware. In 2010, after some tumultuous development, the game was cancelled after the closure of Nibri. Later on in 2014, indie developers Randy Freer and Jeremy Cleave said they had acquired the rights to Sadness, but they retracted their claims the next day. Because of this, I assume the game will never be released. So, there are 13 pieces of lost Nintendo media, and there's definitely more I could talk about, so if you want me to cover more, just let me know down below. It's sad that all these games ended up lost. We might never know what they could have been, but we can only hope that builds or ROMs get found. Let me know your thoughts down below and leave a like and subscribe, but only if you want to. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.